We've all been there. The group project. On one hand, it's a chance for brilliant collaboration. On the other, it can be total chaos, with one person left doing all the work. It's a huge part of learning, but let's be honest, it's rarely perfect. But what if a new kind of team member could change all that? A team member powered by AI. So how exactly could an AI actually supercharge the classic group project? Let's dive in. It's the ultimate paradox, right? When a group project works, it's one of the best ways to really truly learn something. But when it doesn't, well, it's a mess of scheduling nightmares and wildly uneven effort. The research we're digging into today gets right to the heart of this problem and asks a fascinating question. Could generative AI be the missing piece of the puzzle? So here's the key thing to understand. Real collaborative learning isn't just about dividing up the work, where you do your part, I do my part, and we staple it together at the end. That's just cooperative work. True collaboration is about building something together that none of us could have built alone. It's that shared struggle and creation of knowledge that's so incredibly powerful. And that's exactly where things get so tricky. The real challenge isn't just the final essay or presentation. It's the process. It's managing the conversation, figuring out whose idea to go with, and making sure everyone actually gets a chance to speak. You can't just throw students into a group and expect all that to happen magically. And that's why researchers have been trying to build tools to help for decades. This brings us to a really central idea in education, one that gives us a perfect way to think about how AI can fit in. We're going to talk about the concept of scaffolding. I want you to picture the scaffolding around a building under construction. It isn't part of the final building, right? But you absolutely need it to build the thing in the first place. Well, in learning, scaffolding is the exact same idea. It's temporary support that helps a student or group tackle a challenge they aren't quite ready for on their own. And just like with a building, the whole point is to eventually take it away. This idea of digital scaffolding isn't new at all. There's a whole field called computer-supported collaborative learning that's been at this for a long, long time. So you got to see generative AI not as something that came out of nowhere, but as the newest and maybe the most powerful and flexible tool we've ever had in this toolbox. Okay, so what can this new tool actually do? Well, it turns out it's not just one thing. A Gen AI can wear a whole bunch of different hats to help a student group succeed. And this slide gives us a fantastic overview of the different personas an AI can take on. We can basically group them into three big categories: the AI as an information tool, the AI as a guide, and maybe most excitingly, the AI as a full-on team member. So first up, let's talk about the most straightforward roles. The AI can act like a superpowered search engine, a massive repository of information the group can ask for facts and figures. Or it can be a task performer. You tell it to generate a paragraph of text, or a cool image for a slide, or even a bit of code, and it just does it. But here's where it gets way more interesting. The AI can do a lot more than just fetch and carry. It can take on a much more active role. As a facilitator, it can literally monitor who's talking and who isn't, and gently nudge the quieter students to share their thoughts. Or as a tutor, it can ask the group thought-provoking questions to push their thinking to a much deeper level. And this is where it starts to feel like we're living in the future. The AI can be a creative partner. Imagine it generating a completely different solution to the group's problem, just so they have something to compare their own work against. Or, and get this, it could even join the discussion as an artificial group member, playing the role of, say, an expert engineer, and contributing its own ideas, just like a human would. So, we've seen the different roles an AI can play. But what's really amazing is how we can fine-tune that support. This slide here shows that the help isn't just one size fits all. We can ask, is the group struggling with what they're learning, how they're working, or who's doing the work? The AI can be programmed to target any of those things. First off, the AI can target the what, the cognitive stuff, the actual knowledge. It can provide facts on the topic, but more importantly, it can prompt students to explain why they think something is true. It helps them build that shared understanding we were talking about earlier, that real collaboration. Next, it can target the how. This is about the group's process, helping them think about their own thinking. It can give feedback on the group's final product, sure, but what's really cool is it can help students learn how to give better feedback to each other. Now that's a game changer for learning. And finally, the AI can target the who, the social dynamics of the group itself. Think of it as a perfectly neutral moderator. It can watch to make sure everyone's participating equally, it can encourage that one quiet member to speak up, and it can even suggest whose turn it is to take the lead. This handles all that tricky human stuff, so teachers can focus on the bigger picture. Look, this all sounds amazing in theory, but here's the billion-dollar question. Does any of this actually work? Does it really improve how students learn? Okay, let's look at some numbers. In statistics, there's a thing called eta squared that tells you how big of an impact something had. Anything over 0.14 is considered a large effect. Well, one study that used AI scaffolding to help students with their English speaking skills found an eta squared of 0.33. That is a huge positive effect.
And here's another one. A different study looked at using AI tools in a digital storytelling project. They found an eta squared of 0.16. Once again, that's a large positive impact, this time on the student's ability to actually work together to solve a complex problem.
So the early results are definitely promising, for sure. But we have to be a little bit careful here. The research is still really new, and a lot of these studies focus on very specific subjects like computer programming. We're going to need a lot more research across a lot more subjects to really know how far these benefits go.
You might be wondering, how does the AI even know when to jump in and help? Well, it's not magic. It actually follows a really simple but powerful three-step loop. First, it detects what's going on by collecting data. Then, it diagnoses the situation by checking that data against a goal. And finally, it acts, providing just the right support at just the right time. Detect, diagnose, act. Simple as that.
And how do we tell the AI what that right support is? Well, it's mostly done in two ways. We can use natural language prompting, literally just telling the AI, hey, I want you to act as an expert physicist. Or we can use more old school, rigid production rules. If a student hasn't spoken in 5 minutes, then prompt them to say something. At the end of the day, it's all still guided by a human teacher's goals. So where does this all leave us? As we look to the future, we have to be incredibly careful about how we use these powerful new tools. The goal has to be about creating smarter, deeper learning, not just offering easier shortcuts. And this quote right here points to the single biggest danger. Researchers have a name for it: cognitive offloading. Basically, if the AI makes things too easy, students might just let the machine do all the hard thinking for them. But that struggle, that's often where the real learning happens. We run the risk of accidentally undermining the very thing we're trying to help.
So let's be really clear. This technology is not about replacing teachers. It's about giving them superpowers. But the choice we have to make is absolutely fundamental. Are we going to design these tools as powerful scaffolds that help students learn more deeply than ever before? Or are we going to accidentally create shortcuts that lead to what one study called metacognitive laziness? That's the question that will define the next chapter of education.